In the endless silence of the galaxy, where countless stars burned like cold and distant lanterns, a strange tremor rippled through the void. It was not the sound of war, not the echo of trade ships crossing between empires, but something deeper. Something. Older, it came as a vibration in the fabric of space itself, a pulse that stretched from one edge of the known galaxy to the other. And those who felt it knew at once that it was not natural. For centuries, the galaxy had whispered that Earth was gone, destroyed, erased from the map of civilizations by betrayal and silence. But now that silence broke, and the stars themselves seemed to shiver. A lone scout ship belonging to the Valari Republic was the first to catch it drifting near the dark edge of the void. Its scanners picked up a signal buried under layers of interference. An ancient frequency long abandoned the pilot. At first thought it was a ghost signal, a remnant of some lost battle. But as the patterns grew clearer, he froze. The message was unmistakable. It was human. No one had heard human transmissions in more than 300 years, and yet here it was, beating like a heart against the stars. The pilot tried to report his finding, but his comms flickered. The ship trembled, as if unseen hands had reached across the darkness. The stars outside his viewport dimmed, their light fading until only one shape stood against the dark, a massive silhouette rising out of the black, a construct so large it swallowed starlight whole. It had no name in the Valari archives, but the pilot's instincts screamed the word Guardian. The figure moved slowly with a weight that felt ancient, and terrible engines lighting like dying sun's shadows flowing from its hull, as though the ship itself carried darkness with it. When the pilot looked closer, he saw scars across its armor. Massive wounds carved into steel, as if the giant had fought wars long forgotten and survived every death that tried to claim it. The signal pulsed again, clearer. Now words carried in a language no alien dared to believe still existed. Earth lives. It said two simple words that made the galaxy tremble. The Valari pilot tried to flee, but his engines failed. Systems shut down one after another. And as he screamed into dead comms, his last sight was the Guardian's eyes, twin points of crimson light blazing in the dark, then silence. His ship was never found. Only his final fragmented transmission reached Valari Command, and when they decoded it, their leaders trembled. Across the galaxy, news spread faster than light. Entire councils gathered in secret. Some laughed, claiming it was lies, a trick of rebels. Others whispered that the prophecy had begun for generations. Old stories spoke of Earth's guardian, a protector hidden in the void, waiting for the time of return. Most dismissed these stories as superstition. But now no one could deny the fear. Fleets on the outer rims reported stars dimming, entire suns flickering as if drained of life. Whenever the unknown shape passed through, spaceships vanished, patrols failed to return, and always just before silence, the same transmission pulsed. Earth lives merchants stopped travel through certain sectors. Smugglers abandoned profitable lanes. Pirates refused to operate near the Shadow's path. The entire galaxy seemed to shrink away from the dark. But fear was not the only reaction in places where empires ruled with cruelty. Whispers spread among the oppressed. They said the humans had come back. They said the Guardian was their avenger, their liberator across colonies, where people lived under chains. Hope began to grow like fire in dry fields. They waited, they watched the stars, for signs of the dark ship that carried judgment. A high council of the Dominion met in panic. Their fleets were vast, their armies endless. But their leaders remembered history. They were the ones who betrayed Earth long ago. They were the ones who struck the final blow that drove humanity into silence and exile. If the Guardian had returned, then it was vengeance that fueled his heart. Still, they told themselves Earth was a myth. Their children were taught that humanity was broken, scattered, erased. But as they argued, as they shouted at one another, their lights flickered, power failing in the heart of their stronghold, and outside their world they saw it. a shadow blocking the starlight, massive and patient watching. The Guardian spoke again, this time on every frequency and every language across. Every world and station, his voice was neither fully human nor fully machine. It was deep and cold and filled with the weight of centuries of silence. "I return from the void," he said, and as his words poured through comms and speakers across the galaxy, millions listened, unable to look away. "My world was taken, my people were broken, but we endured. Now I come not to beg, but to remind the stars that Earth does not die." His words ended, and the silence that followed was worse than war. The galaxy held its breath, knowing that whatever came next would change everything forever. The shadow moved like a storm through the void, vast and relentless. A giant carved of steel and silence, it drifted across systems that had long been forgotten, its engines, leaving trails of black fire that swallowed the light of nearby stars. Entire colonies reported the sudden dimming of their skies, the fading warmth of their suns, and fear spread like a fever across the galaxy. Yet for the Guardian, there was no fear, only memory inside his colossal ship, buried deep within armored walls and endless corridors. He awoke fully for the first time in centuries. His systems roared to life, lights flickering across his vessel as ancient machines breathed again. The Guardian was not merely a ship nor simply a weapon. He was the last creation of Earth, a fusion of man and machine forged to carry humanity's will into eternity. His mind burned with fragments of a broken past, images of Earth's cities falling. To flames, oceans, boiling skies turned black. By betrayal, he remembered the councils of alien empires who promised alliance, then turned their fleets against his people. He remembered standing as Earth's final defender, and he remembered silence, the long exile drifting in the dark, waiting. Now he was awake, and his purpose was clear. Vengeance was carved into his being. Yet vengeance was not the only fire that drove him in the quiet of his mind. Voices whispered, faint and broken, the last transmissions of his people carried through time like ghosts, children crying, soldiers swearing oaths, mothers calling for their sons. The Guardian heard them all, and he carried their voices within him. They were his fuel, they were his soul. And when he spoke again, his voice was thunder stretched across the galaxy. "I am the Guardian of Earth. I rise from silence to claim what was stolen." The message struck terror into the hearts of rulers who believed Earth was dead. The Dominion, especially the great empire, that once led the attack against humanity, gathered its warlords, their leader. A scarred being named Zorath snarled in rage. He remembered the war. He remembered the ferocity of humans fighting even when hopeless. And now the thought that their Guardian still lived filled him with fury. He called for his fleets. He demanded that the Guardian be destroyed before the galaxy remembered its fear of Earth. Yet across the stars, not everyone trembled. Some species long enslaved by the Dominion listened. With hope, their histories told of humans who once fought beside them, humans who stood against oppression. And now they whispered that the Guardian was a sign that the age of chains would end. Rebellion began to stir in hidden corners, and the sound of Earth lives became their secret battle cry, even as the Guardian moved forward. Spreading shadows across every system he entered, he did not strike. Yet he did not destroy, he only watched. And in his silence, the galaxy's fear grew heavier. The Guardian ship reached the edge of a star system claimed by the Dominion. A fleet of warships moved to intercept hundreds of vessels bristling with weapons surrounding him like wolves around a wounded beast. But when their sensors focused, they felt something unnatural. Their systems flickered, their weapons glitched, stars dimmed as if their very energy was being drained. Their admirals ordered fire missiles, lasers, energy beams filled the void, yet every strike vanished into the shadows that clung to the Guardian's hull. Their weapons seemed meaningless. The Guardian did not answer. At first, he allowed their fear to grow until his voice cut through their comms, cold and unyielding. "You betrayed us. You hunted us. You thought silence would last forever, but silence is broken, and Earth remembers. Then his ship moved. A single beam of crimson light tore through space, slicing an entire battlecruiser. In half, the rest of the fleet scattered. Some tried to fight. Others fled their commanders, screamed for order, but fear had already broken them. Zorath watched the battle from afar, rage twisting his face. He realized this was no myth, no ghost. This was real. The Guardian was back, and he was stronger than before, the Dominion's greatest. Fleets might not be enough to stop him. Still, he swore that he would lead the charge personally to destroy humanity's last weapon. The galaxy will kneel, he growled, or burn. But in the corners of the galaxy, the words of the Guardian spread faster. Then his fleet's oppressed worlds painted Earth lives on walls, whispered it in alleys, and dreamed of the day when the Guardian would free them from chains. And as the Guardian left the ruined battlefield behind, he carried their whispers 2 voices, rising with the voices of his own people, and for the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt not just fear, but the weight of destiny, for the Guardian was awake, and the stars themselves seemed to darken in his path. The galaxy was restless. Entire worlds lived in the shadow of a name they had been taught to forget, but could no longer deny. Earth was no longer a myth, and the Guardian was no longer a ghost. His voice had pierced the silence, and his presence had shaken the foundations of power. The Dominion's propaganda machines worked without rest, broadcasting messages across every star system, insisting the Guardian was only a malfunctioning relic, a dying machine with no true power. But their words carried no weight against the truth. People had seen the skies darken. They had seen fleets shatter under a single beam of crimson fire. No words could hide that reality. And whispers spread like wildfire through the galaxy, even among those sworn to serve the Dominion in hidden corners of space. Rebels and outlaws began to gather, not out of loyalty to Earth, but out of hatred for their rulers. They spoke of forming a secret alliance, waiting for the Guardian to strike openly. Some even sent coded messages into the void, hoping he would answer, but the Guardian did not reply. He drifted forward with the silence of inevitability, his ship swallowing light with every movement inside his vessel. The echoes of Earth still lived. He carried the voices of a lost people, the last fragments of humanity frozen in memory. Children's laughter, soldiers' last shouts, cities crying out as flames consumed them. The Guardian remembered, and remembering was his weapon in the Dominion's throne. World Zorath seethed. His rage burned hotter with every report of fear spreading through his empire. He could not afford to let hope grow among the weak. He gathered his generals inside a war chamber vast and cold, their faces lit by the glow of projected star maps. The Guardian is not invincible, he roared. He is a machine, a relic, and he will fall. I will take the fleets myself. I will end this with my own hand. The generals obeyed, but behind their eyes was doubt. They too had seen the recordings of the Guardian tearing through fleets with a single strike. They too had felt the silence that followed, as though space itself bowed before him. While the Dominion prepared for war far across the galaxy, a small research station belonging to the Velari studied fragments of the Guardian's signal. They were the first to detect it. They had lost a scout ship to it, and now they worked in secret trying to decode the deeper layers of the transmission. One young scientist named Kale believed there was more than just threats hidden in the signal. He heard patterns, rhythms like a heartbeat, or perhaps words not yet fully revealed. He argued to his colleagues that the Guardian was not just broadcasting power. He was reaching out. But no, one believed him. They were too afraid to speak of humanity at all. Kyle, however, continued in secret. Every night he listened to the fragments replaying the deep, resonant voice of the Guardian. He could almost hear sorrow beneath the thunder grief. Woven into the warning Earth lives the words repeated again and again, like a pulse, as though meant to remind the stars of a truth they wanted to bury. Kale wondered if Earth was truly alive, if the Guardian was not alone. What if somewhere hidden, in the void, humanity still endured and waited? He did not know that his private obsession was about to make him the first outsider to draw the Guardian's attention, as the Dominion's fleets gathered and the galaxy held its breath. The Guardian moved into a sector abandoned centuries ago, a graveyard of shattered ships, relics of the last war where human and alien fleets had destroyed each other. The wreckage drifted like frozen bones, an eternal reminder of betrayal. The Guardian slowed, as if paying respect, lights flickering across his scarred hull, for here in this silent grave he remembered the end. He remembered standing against impossible odds alone as Earth burned and still fighting until silence claimed him. His voice rumbled. Into the void, low and mournful, but filled with resolve, I did not die. I waited. It was then that Kyle's equipment lit up brighter than ever before, the signal clearer than it had ever been. He froze, realizing the Guardian had shifted frequencies. As though answering him directly, Kyle's hands shook as he recorded it, heart-pounding with the knowledge that he had been heard across endless space. The Guardian's words thundered in his lab, not only Earth lives, but more a promise Earth returns. Message spread before Kyle could contain it. His station's network pulsed with it until whispers turned to cries, rebellions turned to movements. Chains began to break, and across the stars, people began to prepare, not for silence, but for war. Zorath heard it too, and his fury was unstoppable. His fleets were ready, his armies endless, but for the first time in centuries, so too was Earth's Guardian, and the next meeting would not be in silence. It would be in fire. The Dominion's fleets moved, like a tide of steel, their warships stretching across the void in numbers that blotted out the stars. Entire armadas drawn from conquered worlds gathered under Zorath's command, their banners glowing crimson in the dark. They were the most feared force in the galaxy, trained, merciless, and loyal to fear. Yet despite their power, unease stirred within their ranks. Stories of the Guardian traveled faster than orders. Fleets whispered of ships vanishing, of weapons that failed, of stars dimming. When his shadow passed, even admirals who had never known defeat felt something alien creeping into their thoughts. Doubt Zorath stood at the heart of his warship, a colossus of black metal bristling with weapons. He gazed into the holographic map, where the Guardian's path glowed like a streak of blood cutting through sectors toward the Dominion's core. His jaw clenched, his voice a growl. This thing believes it can challenge me. Believes it can frighten my empire. But it is one machine, and machines can be broken. Prepare every fleet. We will end this myth before it spreads further. His generals bowed, but the silence in their eyes betrayed them. Even they wondered if the Guardian was beyond what their weapons could touch, far across the void. The Guardian drifted through a system cloaked in silence. A dying sun flickered weakly over shattered planets, ruins left from wars long forgotten. His ship glided through the wreckage, scanning each husk of civilization within his core, memory. He compared them to Earth, and grief tightened his thoughts. These worlds, too, had been abandoned, betrayed, consumed by war. The galaxy was filled with graves, and he carried the weight of them. All the voices of Earth whispered louder than ever, urging him forward. And for the first time, he released more than a warning. He sent an image. Across countless systems, enslaved miners, workers, rebels, and even common citizens saw the same vision appear on their terminals, their walls, their skies. A burning Earth, cities in flames, oceans boiling under bombardment skies, torn apart by alien fleets, and through the smoke a single figure rose, the Guardian, his shadow towering his voice, filling every corner of every world you believe Earth is. Gone. But Earth lives. I am the proof of its survival. I am its vengeance and its promise. The stars drown in darkness, but I carry the fire, every soul who resists, every chain that breaks. I hear you and I come. The message was unstoppable, Dominion. Sensors tried to block it, But the image burned itself into systems like a living brand within hours. Rebellions erupted, entire mining colonies rose against their overseers. Soldiers deserted their posts, whispering that the Guardian was near. The Dominion cracked down savagely, but the fire had already spread. On the Valari research station, Kale stood frozen as he too received the vision, his theories confirmed. The Guardian was not only aware he was reaching out, Kale's colleagues panicked, fearing punishment for even witnessing it. But Kale felt awe. His heart raced as he whispered to himself, "This is not just war. This is the return of something greater." But Zorath only burned hotter with rage. When he saw the vision, his throne chamber shook as he slammed a clawed fist against the steel floor. Enough of this ghost. He is no god. He is a relic, a machine, and I will tear him apart with my own hands. Summon the Dread Fleet. Release the hunters. Awaken the world breakers. We will crush him before his shadow spreads any further. And so the galaxy braced the largest armada ever assembled, prepared to descend upon the Guardian. Thousands of warships, weapons capable of shattering planets, dreadnoughts whose guns had silenced civilizations. Yet when the Guardian sensed their approach, he did not retreat. Instead, he turned slowly and drifted straight into their path, his hull glowing faintly with the heat of awakening engines, shadows rippling around him like living fire. He moved with the inevitability of doom. The first engagement began with silence. The Dominion opened fire, unleashing a storm of missiles, beams, and plasma that lit the void like 1,000 suns. But as the fury rained down, the Guardian's hull seemed to drink. In the fire, their weapons vanished against him like waves against stone. Then a single crimson line erupted from his ship, cutting through the void so fast no eye could follow, and a dreadnought split in half, glowing like molten stone as it fell. A part panic rippled through the Dominion lines, yet their admirals screamed for order, urging them forward. The Guardian spoke again, his voice echoing across their comms and bleeding into every system across the galaxy. "You betrayed Earth, you drowned. The stars in darkness and thought silence eternal. But silence ends now. Earth returns with fire and steel." His words were thunder rolling across the void, and even as Dominion ships regrouped and pressed forward, the certainty of doom had already begun to break them. The battle was only beginning, but the galaxy already knew this was not the fight of a machine. This was the return of humanity's will, sharpened into vengeance and carried by the last Guardian of Earth, and no matter. The void was aflame with war. Dominion ships poured through hyperspace corridors in endless streams, their formations stretching farther than sensors could measure. Dreadnoughts, cruisers, carriers, world breakers, each armed with enough firepower to erase entire planets. They came with rage, with fear, with orders to crush the Guardian at any cost, but at the center of their storm, the Guardian drifted steady, unshaken, a single vessel facing an ocean of steel. His crimson core glowed brighter with every passing second, as if feeding on the very defiance of those who opposed him. He was not flesh. He was not bound by exhaustion. He was something greater, a memory forged into iron, a will that refused to die. The first wave struck with precision. Their commanders shouted coordinates, unleashing fire from every angle. Beams tore through the void, missiles streaked toward the Guardian and detonated in blinding bursts. The galaxy itself seemed to tremble under the fury, but as the flames cleared, the Guardian remained untouched. Shadows of energy rippled around his hull, bending light, twisting gravity weapons simply dissolved before reaching him. His voice rose again, filling every channel of communication, not just within the Dominion fleet, but across the galaxy. You believed Earth was silenced. You believed the fire was gone. But I am its echo, and I am its return. Across enslaved colonies and broken worlds, people froze as the message cut through their systems. Overseers tried to shut it down, but no technology could block it. Miners stared up from the pits, workers stopped in the factories, children turned their eyes to the sky, hearing words they never thought they would live to hear. Earth, lives Earth, fights, Earth returns there. Chains suddenly felt weaker. Their fear less powerful. Rebellions began to erupt faster than Dominion troops could contain them. Yet in the war chamber of his flagship, Zorath refused to falter. His monstrous form loomed over his generals, his teeth. Bared in a snarl, more fleets he commanded, drive them in, crush him with numbers. The generals hesitated. They had seen dreadnoughts ripped apart by a single strike. They had seen entire squadrons erased by the Guardian's crimson beam. Still, they obeyed because fear of Zorath was older than fear of any ghost of Earth, and so wave after wave pressed forward. Kale watched from his distant research station, unable to tear his eyes from the live feeds stolen from Dominion networks. He saw the Guardian cutting through armadas with impossible precision, each strike perfectly measured, each movement filled with purpose. Kale whispered in awe. Not a machine, no, not just a weapon. This is memory alive. This is vengeance shaped into fire, he recorded. Every broadcast, every frequency determined that history would not forget this time. Determined that the galaxy would not bury Earth again. The Dominion tried to adapt. They launched world breakers, massive engines of war that could shatter moons with their bombardments. They encircled the Guardian, unleashing their combined power. The void burned with such violence that sensors across the galaxy went blind. Stars flickered under the fury. But when the flames cleared, the Guardian remained his crimson. Light brighter than before, and with a single resonant pulse, he shattered one world breaker after another, their hulls crumbling as though undone by the weight of time itself. Panic surged through the fleets. Commanders screamed retreat only to be silenced by Zorath's voice. No retreat. No mercy, you will die before you flee. Still fear was stronger than orders. Ships broke formation, fleeing into the darkness, spreading stories with them, stories of a fire that could not be quenched, of a voice that could not be silenced. And across the galaxy, the legend grew. The Guardian of Earth had returned, and the Dominion was not invincible. The Guardian's ship moved forward, slow, relentless like a storm that could not be outrun each beam of crimson. Fire another blow to the illusion of Dominion strength. His voice thundered again, the stars drown in darkness. But the fire of Earth cannot be buried. I carry it for every soul lost, for every chain forged, and I will not stop until the silence is broken forever in. That moment the galaxy changed forever. For hope had been reborn, not as a whisper, not as rumor, but as fire in the skies. The Dominion's grip cracked, rebellions spread faster. Fleets wavered, even the loyal began to question Zorath's strength. But in the throne of his flagship, Zorath's rage only deepened. His claws dug into the steel, his eyes burned with fury. He refused to yield. He would not allow a ghost to undo what centuries of blood had built. And so he prepared something. Darker than fleets, something older than machines. He called upon weapons hidden even from his generals. Ancient horrors locked away in the deep vaults of his empire to unleash them against the Guardian of Earth. For Zorath swore he would drown the fire once more, even if it meant tearing the stars themselves apart. The Dominion's throne world burned with urgency, alarms echoing through every command hall as Zorath prepared his final move. Fleets had failed. Dreadnoughts had fallen, world breakers, shattered under the crimson fire, and still the Guardian advanced unstoppable like the slow march of doom. Zorath's fury shook the chamber as he called forth what no living soul had ever seen. The ancient vaults beneath his empire opened vast. Machines awoke, their cores burning with forbidden power. These were the Oblivion Engine's creations, older than the Dominion itself, birthed from a forgotten age, when gods walked among stars, each one a weapon capable of unraveling reality itself. As the engines were unleashed, the galaxy trembled. Every sensor across 1,000 systems screamed with warning. Black storms tore across hyperspace corridors. Gravity twisted and light bent, as if the universe itself recoiled from their awakening. Whispers spread fast, faster than fleets, faster than fear. Zorath has broken the last seals. The engines have awakened. Even Dominion citizens whispered in terror, for it was said these weapons consumed not just worlds but the very stars that gave them life. The Guardian sensed it too as his crimson glow pulsed brighter. His sensors locked onto the oncoming storm. In the void ahead, shadows moved titanic shapes beyond comprehension, their hulls vast enough to block suns, their cores glowing. With a void, energy darker than death itself, the engines advanced not like ships, but like walking prisons of reality. Each step tearing the fabric of space, each breath a storm of decay. Yet the Guardian did not falter within his core. The voices of Earth roared louder, pushing him forward. The stars drown in darkness, they whispered, but the fire must burn. Kale watched from his station hands, trembling as he decoded the incoming signals. His heart pounded as the Oblivion engines filled his screen. He spoke to his team, though his voice shook. These are not just weapons. They are wounds in reality. If the Guardian cannot stop them, the galaxy itself may collapse. His colleagues whispered that perhaps the Dominion had gone too far, that perhaps no force could stand against such nightmares. But Kale refused to believe it. He had seen the fire once, and he would not abandon hope. The battle began not with fire, but with silence. The Oblivion engines pulsed, and the void went dark. Dominion. Fleets scattered like insects, as even their own masters could not withstand the storm. Energy waves rolled out, erasing lesser ships like dust before the wind and into that storm. The Guardian moved unshaken, his hull glowing brighter with every surge. His crimson beam cut across the dark, but when it struck the engines, it did not destroy them. Instead, the void shimmered as if reality itself had swallowed the attack. These were not ships. They were hunger given form. Still, the Guardian did not retreat. He pressed closer, beams erupting from his core, striking again and again, until at last one engine cracked a wound spreading across its hull. Light poured out like bleeding fire, and the void screamed. The sound carried not through comms, but through the bones of every living being across the galaxy, a reminder that something impossible had just been done. The Guardian had wounded the unbreakable. The galaxy erupted in hope. Colonies cheered, miners dropped their tools, rebellions grew. Bolder, entire fleets deserted, Dominion orders rising instead under the banner of the fire. Zorath's nightmare had become his undoing, for the more terror he unleashed, the brighter the Guardian burned. But Zorath did not yield. His monstrous form glared into the storm, his claws clenched. He shouted across the void, his voice amplified by Dominion tech. You are no god, you are no savior, you are a machine forged from ashes, and I will erase you with the engines of eternity. His words echoed, but even as he spoke, doubt began to coil in his chest, for the Guardian had not fallen. He had risen higher. The clash raged on, light against dark, fire against void, the Guardian weaving through impossible storms, striking at cores only he could sense. His hull cracked, glowing with wounds, yet every strike he returned cut deeper into the engines one by one. They faltered, collapsing in bursts of broken reality, until only silence remained. Silence, but not peace. For the Guardian knew Zorath was not finished in the depths of the throne world. He sensed it, a darkness even older than the engines stirring awake, a presence bound in chains of blood and fear. Something Zorath had kept hidden for centuries, waiting for the day he could unleash it. And as the stars dimmed again, the voices of Earth whispered through the Guardian, not with fear, but with warning. The true darkness has not yet risen. Prepare for the final war.